Chapter 7. Over the English Channel, Wednesday, April 3, 1912, 8:20 a.m. The waves of the channel glittered in the early morning sun like diamonds. Not that Juliana Glam noticed it. At this moment, no subject occupied Juliana's mind other than the safety of the Sopwith aeroplane that carried her and her father 1,000 feet above the rocky coastline. Aeroplane. A glorified kite would be more like it. The biplane was barely more than fabric stretched tightly over a flimsy wooden framework. The slightest puff of breeze sent it wheeling. What kept it up in the sky was understood only by a, so far, merciful God. "She has to be light, Julie," her father had explained. "It's all based on the science of aerodynamics." Juliana held on to her leather seat strap, which was the only thing keeping her tethered to this flying machine. Her father, the 17th Earl of Glamford, knew less than nothing about science. His area of expertise tended toward activities that landed him on the society pages: polo, pugilism, gambling, and now aviation. The only part of this flying handkerchief that was remotely substantial was the motor, which was fixed between the double wings, roaring and vibrating, the propeller twirling in front of it. Even this was not particularly reassuring, since the craft was so overweighted toward the front that a nosedive seemed inevitable. At 15 years of age, Juliana was far too young to be expected to sacrifice her life just because Papa wanted to be a 20th century pioneer. She craned her neck to look back at her father in the pilot's seat. "When are we going back?" she called over the engine's buzz. He grinned at her beneath his goggles. "I have a little surprise for you." She was wind-battered, terrified, choking on exhaust fumes, nauseated by the bouncing motion, and possibly part deaf from the noise. Her long hair, she was certain, was crushed and limp under her aviator's hood. Who knew how long it would take to brush it out again? This, her first ever aeroplane ride, was surely surprise enough for today. But one simply didn't say those things to Rodney, Earl of Glamford. He was a man accustomed to doing as he pleased. Lady Glam, his long-suffering wife, had given up on trying to cool his passion for gambling and outrageous hobbies. What chance did their 15-year-old daughter stand? She made the mistake of looking down. They were over the rugged coastline now. Gone was the possibility of a soft water landing on the aeroplane's pontoons. If anything went wrong here, they would crash into the chalky grey cliffs. "Are you sure this is safe?" Juliana asked. "What if the engine stops?" "As long as there's petrol, the engine doesn't stop," came the reply. Her father took his hand from the stick momentarily to point past the circular shadow made by the whirling propeller. "There, my girl. Take a gander." Ahead of them, the dramatic shoreline flattened out, and in the distance, the city of Southampton crept from its bustling seaport onto the English coast. "What? The town?" The houses looked like matchboxes, the harbour a tiny crisscross of docks. And then the ship came into focus. At first glance, she looked like just another small boat, until Juliana realized how far away she was. At least a mile. No, several miles. She counted the smokestacks. 1, 2, 3, 4. "Is that?" "The RMS Titanic, just down from Belfast last night," the Earl finished, his grin so wide that it threatened to split his face in two. In a week's time, Juliana and her father would be a part of the Titanic's maiden voyage, sailing to New York to meet with an associate of Papa's, a man who owned several oil wells in a place called Texas. Gushers, he called them. Such a vulgar word. In truth, the whole thing seemed rather vulgar to Juliana, smelling strongly of the shop. Why would her father rub elbows with a man who drilled holes in the ground, no matter how wealthy he happened to be? But just as it was futile to predict the patterns of weather that brought alternately torrential rain and parching droughts to the family's estate outside London, so was it to attempt to understand the mind of the 17th Earl of Glamford. "Isn't she beautiful, Julie?" her father crowed. That she was, and vast. As the biplane drew nearer, the Titanic's sheer size began to reveal itself. Her immense black hull seemed more like an offshore island than anything man-made. And what an island! Sleek and very long, with a polished deck that shined nearly as bright as the Whitecaps, topped by a gleaming superstructure that was by itself one of the largest and most modern buildings in the world. "Shall we go for a closer look?" Her father pushed forward on the yoke, and suddenly they were falling. No, not falling, diving. The circle formed by the propeller's motion fixed on the Titanic far below. "Papa!" Juliana wheeled around to stare in horror at the pilot's seat behind her. Her father's expression was pure bliss. Juliana felt her ears pop and pop again as the great ship grew larger and larger. By the time they were within 200 feet of the mast, her astounding length filled Juliana's field of vision. On the poop deck, a terrified dock worker was waving and bellowing. A common labourer shouting at Rodney Glam as if the Earl were a lunatic escaped from an asylum. Juliana would have been offended if she hadn't toyed with the thought herself more than once. And still their wild descent continued. The Earl was in his glory. "What do you say we provide the men with a little entertainment?" Father and daughter swooped down over the pride of the White Star Line until they were perhaps 50 feet above the top of the Titanic's gigantic smokestacks. Just when Juliana was sure they were about to be dashed to bits, her father pulled back on the stick to bring the airplane out of its dive. The craft shook for a moment and then leveled off, taking them directly over the four funnels. All at once, a deep roar assailed her ears, and a blast of torrid air exploded from the forward stack. Juliana's lungs filled with smoke. She began to cough convulsively. The world around them disappeared, replaced by an acrid black cloud. But that was not the part that terrified her. The flying machine dropped, sucked into the downdraft. Frantically, the Earl wrestled with the stick in a desperate attempt to pilot the small craft out of harm's way. The biplane heeled over on its side, the double wing passing within a few feet of a catastrophic collision. Juliana saw the enormous smokestack swinging up at her, a giant swatting at a pesky insect. Then, just as suddenly, the pilot regained control, and they climbed out of danger, soaring up and away from the Titanic and Southampton. Even the swashbuckling Earl of Glamford was shaken by the near miss. "Well, that was a bit of excitement, wasn't it, Julie?" Juliana held on to the seat strap until the thumping of her heart slowed to the point where she could resume breathing. She peered longingly over her shoulder at the immense bulk of the Titanic, dominating the seaport and the English coast. The rock-solid deck of the largest ocean liner in the world. Right now, that seemed like a pretty safe place to Juliana Glam.